In the previous lecture, I shared with you the perspective of evolutionary psychologists that genes and nurturing behaviors define beauty and ugliness, with what is suitable for gene transmission being beautiful and what is not being ugly. This viewpoint has been challenged by experts in various fields, particularly in the arts, literature, and sociology, who believe that beauty and ugliness are products of cultural inheritance and experiential shaping. In today's lecture, we will explore how evolutionary psychologists respond to these challenges. Is beauty defined by nature or culture? One hypothesis about beauty is that our definition of it comes from our observation and cognition of the natural world. In nature, symmetry is a characteristic of human and animal bodies, plant leaves, and insect wings, and symmetry is also the earliest rule of beauty that humans have grasped. The ancient Greek philosopher Pythagoras once said, "The line and other forms of beauty must have a symmetrical form." The characteristic of symmetry was also reflected in the colored pottery shapes of China thousands of years ago. However, evolutionary psychologists explain that if you observe carefully, you will find that any symmetrical organism in nature has some degree of asymmetry. Further research shows that the main reason for asymmetry is the influence of parasites, bacteria, and so on, while symmetry indicates that genes have a strong resistance to disease and are not easily affected by the external environment. Therefore, the essence of symmetry is still the quality of genes. In addition to the natural hypothesis of beauty, a more convincing argument comes from the cultural hypothesis. The cultural hypothesis holds that our definition of beauty comes from the inheritance of our culture and the shaping of our experiences. If you open National Geographic magazine, you will see beautiful women from different ethnic groups and countries. You will naturally come to the conclusion, why is everyone's aesthetic so different? Why don't the beautiful women of African tribes meet my aesthetic standards? Therefore, what is beauty is closely related to where I grew up and the culture and society around me. In other words, the definition of beauty comes more from the influence of nurture. Support for the cultural hypothesis comes directly from the sculptures and paintings of the muse goddesses from different periods. In ancient Greece around 100 BC, the sculptures of the muse goddesses had a lean physique, while in the 17th and 18th centuries, the paintings depicted them as voluptuous. However, in the 19th and 20th centuries, the paintings of the muse goddesses once again portrayed them as slender and slim. Similar examples can be found in China. During the spring and autumn period and the Warring States period, King Ling of Chu favored a slim waist, resulting in many women starving in the palace. This preference for thinness reached its peak during the Han Dynasty, leading to the legend of Zhao Fian, who could dance on the palm of a person's hand. However, during the Tang Dynasty, the aesthetic preference shifted to fuller-bodied women, as seen in the famous Yang Yuhuan, who was said to have caused a horse to collapse under her weight. These preferences for body shape during different periods are evidence of the influence of culture on our definition of beauty. Supporters of the cultural hypothesis argue that our aesthetic views do not require such a long time span to change, and in fact, our definition of beauty is constantly evolving. The best evidence of this is the Playmate of the Month feature in Playboy magazine. Since its second issue in 1953, Playboy has featured a Playmate of the Month on its cover. The harsh scrutiny of these women reflects the aesthetic views of men at the time. If you observe the Playmates in chronological order, you will notice a significant change in the aesthetic preference for women, from a preference for fuller, rounder body types in the early days to a preference for muscular, well-defined body types today. Therefore, our preferences for beauty are constantly changing, while our genes cannot change in such a short time. This further supports the idea that our definition of beauty is influenced by cultural inheritance and experiential shaping. However, evolutionary psychologists argue that these are only superficial phenomena, and the essence of beauty lies in something that remains constant throughout these changes, the waist-to-hip ratio, WHR. Whether it is the lean physique of the muse goddess sculptures from ancient Greece, the fuller-bodied muse goddess paintings from the Middle Ages, or the slender muse goddess paintings of modern times, their WHR remains a fixed value of 0.7. Similarly, the Playmates and Playboy magazine have maintained a constant WHR of 0.7, from the fuller, rounder body types in the early days to the muscular, well-defined body types of today. Whether an artist or a men's magazine editor, the subconscious ideal body ratio of waist to hip circumference of 0.7 is held by many. You may ask, why 0.7? Numerous studies have shown that when a woman's waist-to-hip ratio is 0.7, it signifies that she is in her prime reproductive years. At this time, she has higher fertility and optimal levels of estrogen. Additionally, during this period, she has the highest resistance to pregnancy-related diseases, such as gestational diabetes, which can lead to complications for both the mother and the baby. However, women with a waist-to-hip ratio of 0.7 have the strongest resistance to gestational diabetes. Furthermore, women with this body type are also less likely to develop cardiovascular diseases and have a lower risk of uterine cancer. However, when the waist-to-hip ratio decreases or increases by 0.1 units, meaning when the ratio is 0.6 or 0.8, her fertility decreases by 30%. This finding holds true even after controlling for factors such as age, obesity, and smoking. I just discussed the golden waist-to-hip ratio of 0.7 for women. You may wonder if there is also a golden waist-to-hip ratio for men. The answer is yes, and it is 0.9. When a man's waist-to-hip ratio is 0.9, he has a lower probability of developing prostate and testicular cancer, indicating stronger fertility. Therefore, on one hand, there is a preference for different body types, whether it be curvy or slender, influenced by culture and experience. On the other hand, we all prefer women with a waist-to-hip ratio of 0.7 and men with a waist-to-hip ratio of 0.9, as they have the strongest fertility regardless of body size. A more direct refutation of the cultural hypothesis comes from measuring 6 to 7-month-old infants. At this age, they have not yet been exposed to cultural influences and cannot even speak a complete sentence. However, if you show them an average face and a non-average face, you will find that these infants spend more time looking at the average face. Evolutionary psychologists argue that even a baby who is still in diapers and completely ignorant of cultural and social rules has already been told by their genes that this is the person they will marry in the future, and they should remember their appearance. Why? Because they have better genes. At this point, you may exclaim that this is truly a society that judges people by their appearance. In ancient Greece, when plagues or famine struck, the city-state would select the ugliest residents as sacrifices, known as pharmakos. The pharmakos would be paraded around the city and whipped with thorns. Finally, the pharmakos would be exiled from the city, or even stoned, burned, or pushed off a cliff. The hunchbacked bell-ringer Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, although noble in character, was always treated as a monster because of his ugly appearance and ultimately failed to win the love of Esmeralda. Quasimodo cried out in despair on the bell tower, "Why was I not made of stone like thee?" However, good genes do not necessarily mean good character or talent. Jin Yong's ancestor, Cha Shuting, was disliked by Emperor Yongzheng because of his wolf-like appearance, and Heshen, known as the most handsome man in the Qing dynasty, was a corrupt official. Worse still, judging people by their appearance can lead to tragic endings. Ted Bundy, the infamous American serial killer and rapist, raped over 100 women and killed at least 28 of them. Many of his victims were deceived by his handsome appearance. You may understand why the global cosmetics industry has an annual sales revenue of over $300 billion, why 1 out of every 100 Koreans has had plastic surgery, and why so many people are lifting weights and doing Pilates in the gym. This is indeed a society that judges people by their appearance. A beautiful face brings unimaginable convenience to our work, marriage, and emotions. Evolution is both loved and hated. On the one hand, it allows us to quickly find suitable partners through beauty, but on the other hand, it allows us to be lazy and unwilling to understand people's inner qualities and virtues. However, just as McDonald's can never become a gourmet meal, humans are not slaves to their genes. Our obsession and love for appearance are just remnants of our evolution over millions of years. Only by breaking free from the shackles of evolution can we experience true emotions between people and find soulmates. Indeed, a beautiful face may attract me to approach him, her, but her character and thoughts determine whether I will walk through life with him, her. Therefore, it starts with appearance, falls for talent, remains loyal to character, and is content with companionship. In the next 3 lectures, I will further discuss intimate relationships from the perspectives of talent, loyalty, and companionship.